Remember when Marvel made a movie about two grown men on steroids beating up an orphan who has heart problems? Yeah. Well, today, we're talking about that movie. So it's officially been 10 years since Captain America: Civil War hit theaters, arguably one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. And while some would say that the MCU went on to reach even greater heights just a couple years later, there's perhaps still never been an MCU film as mature, complex, and thought-provoking as Civil War. And in the same year that gave us another comic book movie about heroes fighting each other that was not exactly as well received, it's safe to say that this movie remains the gold standard for how to pull off a Civil War storyline. So today, we're gonna stop and revisit this Marvel masterpiece and find out what exactly makes it so great. Now, starting from the beginning of the movie, it becomes immediately clear that the core genius of what makes Civil War work is that you can understand both sides. On the one hand, you have Tony, who, coming off the events of Age of Ultron, feels an incredible amount of guilt for all the death and collateral damage that he's caused. Everything that happened in Sokovia was really his fault, and so you can understand why he feels that perhaps they do need certain limitations and oversight to prevent something like that from happening again. It's also why Civil War serves as the perfect follow-up to Age of Ultron. Like, I've heard some people say that Civil War is what Avengers 2 should have been, but really, Civil War doesn't work without Avengers 2. Because up until this point, pretty much all of the civilian deaths and casualties in this universe have not been caused by our heroes. Our heroes have simply been responding to threats that would have otherwise generated a far greater amount of casualties if not for their intervention. But Age of Ultron changes that. Like, that one was solely the doing of Tony Stark. Like, no one that died in that movie needed to die. It's only because of Tony's work that the villain of that movie was even created. So post-Avengers 2, there's actually now a compelling argument to be made about our heroes being supervised. Now, on the other side of this is Steve, who is coming off the events of The Winter Soldier, a movie where he learned that the government agency that he worked for was actually secretly being run by Hydra this entire time. So it's easy to understand why he would not be the most trusting of the government at this time. He also kinda has a point in that while the Avengers aren't perfect, they're likely the best option that the world has.
We may not be perfect, but the safest hands are still our own.
As the government in the Marvel Cinematic Universe has proven itself to not be the smartest. And this right here, having two sides both with understandable arguments, is why this movie works so well. It's why a decade later, you still have people debating Team Cap or Team Iron Man. And even if you disagree with one character more than the other, you can at least still understand where they're both coming from, because the movie does such a good job of continuing their personal character arcs from Winter Soldier and Age of Ultron. The movie also features some of the best dialogue in this entire franchise, like, man, they're just not writing it like this anymore.
He's saying it's our fault?
I'm saying there may be a causality. Our very strength invites challenge. Challenge incites conflict. And conflict breeds catastrophe.
Now, while Civil War is the story of our heroes fighting each other, it's not without a villain. Which brings us to the legend, Zemo. Now, this is a masterclass in how to introduce a villain. Although we don't get a huge amount of information about what exactly Zemo wants, the movie very quickly communicates a lot about him. We learn that he's clever, as he's able to break into the Colonel's home by pretending to crash his car.
Is this your car out front? I jumped the curb.
And utilizes his knowledge that the Colonel wouldn't want the cops involved to his advantage.
I mean, if you want to call the cops, that's okay too, I guess.
No cops.
We also see that he has a very specific focus through the repetition of
Mission report, December 16, 1991. Mission report, December 16, 1991. Mission report, December 16, 1991.
But I think most importantly, we learn that Zemo does not want to be violent for the sake of it. He isn't your typical villain out for blood. He has a very specific goal, and while he's willing to get his hands dirty in order to achieve that goal, he would prefer to do it with minimal violence.
Death would not bother me, but I'd have to use this book and other bloodier methods to find what I need. I don't look forward to that.
And I think this quality actually makes him a more compelling villain. Like, to know that he's not inherently violent, but is willing to do violent things, makes you feel the conviction behind his mission that much more. Now, as some of the team members prepare to sign the Accords, we see Natasha make one last attempt at convincing Steve. This was never gonna work, and even she knows that.
I can't sign it.
I know.
But it gives us one of the most underrated scenes in the entire film. Like, I feel like no one talks about this moment, yet it perfectly highlights the different ideologies on display. Like, of course, we have Steve and Tony, who are on opposite sides of the aisle when it comes to the Accords. But then you have Natasha, who sits in this very interesting middle ground. Natasha doesn't seem to be on one side or the other. Her main focus when it comes to all of this is really just keeping the team together. And this is such a brilliant decision by the filmmakers because she serves as the perfect contrast to Steve Rogers' way of thinking. While Steve is unwilling to budge even 1% from what he believes is right,
I'm sorry, Ned. I can't sign it.
Natasha represents someone who is willing to perhaps put her morals to the side if she feels like it benefits the greater good of the team.
Staying together is more important than how we stay together.
Now, with the signing of the Accords comes the arrival of Black Panther. And rewatching the film, the thing that struck me the most was just how well the movie incorporates this character into the story. The decision to have his father killed immediately gives his character a clear purpose, as the rest of the film is essentially a revenge quest for him. Even though we, as the audience, barely know anything about this character, we know enough. We understand his motivations, we understand why he's on Team Iron Man, and his character feels compelling because you can empathize with his cause, even though we know he's tracking down an innocent man. And it doesn't take long for him to get into the action, as he pops up in one of the film's best action sequences. Now, Civil War is loaded with all-time great Marvel action scenes. Of course, we had the opening disaster in Lagos, where Wanda went a little Butterfingers, and now we have the first of two incredible Bucky escape sequences. What I like about these is how well the movie makes use of its environments. Like, we start inside the building, which gives us this incredible close quarters fight scene in a stairwell where they're punching through doors and bending railings before we transition outside and get to see Black Panther in action for the first time. First of all, it's just sick how he comes into frame where you get the shot of his shadow coming in over Bucky's head. Then the sequence again changes environment as they're now fighting in between cars in an underground highway tunnel. The whole thing is shot with a bunch of low camera angles that allow you to feel the speed of the cars and how quickly our heroes are moving, all culminating with the reveal that under the Black Panther mask is T'Challa. Now, in between all the action, the movie also gets to show off that it's pretty smart, and we see that through the writing. As soon as Bucky gets captured, the movie starts cutting back and forth between our heroes and this seemingly random scene of a delivery driver. And just as our heroes are starting to piece together that something is suspicious about all of this,
Why would the task force release this photo to begin with?
You're saying someone framed him to find him. Doesn't guarantee that whoever framed him would get him. It guarantees that we would.
Yeah.
both of these scenes come together as we realize Zemo, the GOAT, is behind the delivery and he's the one who framed Bucky, merging these two scenes together in a moment where you realize that our heroes are too late. The Winter Soldier has been awoken. And this brings us to the second of our two incredible Bucky escape scenes. Now, the MCU often gets criticized for its fight scenes being a little choppy and heavily edited, and yeah, I kinda hate that. It makes it hard to see the action, and you can never really tell what's going on. But to me, they found a very nice balance in this film where it does have the quick editing that makes it feel punchy and fast-paced, but it's not so edited together to where you can't even tell what's going on. Like, I can at least see what is happening in these fight scenes, and I really appreciate that. And of course, then we get this. I mean, holding back the helicopter, what needs to be said? Top 5 most aura-filled moments in comic book history, I don't care. And God, even the way they film the helicopter blades coming at him, like every time I watch that scene, I literally feel like I have to duck when that blade tries to take his head off. And this brings us to the arrival of Peter Parker. Now, it's been talked about a million times that the MCU nailed its introduction of Spider-Man. Everyone instantly fell in love with Tom Holland in the role, and it was nice to have a Peter that actually looks like a kid for once. But what I want to talk about is actually how well this movie seems to understand the character. Because I would argue Civil War Spider-Man was the best version of Spider-Man that we had gotten in the MCU until Spider-Man No Way Home came out half a decade later. Like, No Way Home gets all the credit for giving him the
"With great power, there must also come great responsibility."
But this movie showed that Peter understood this lesson from the beginning. I mean, just listen.
Look, when you can do the things that I can, but you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you.
He basically just said, with great power comes great responsibility, just using different words. Now, the big spectacle sequence of this film is, of course, the airport battle. This sequence is a lot of fun. It's not the most dramatic or intense part of the film, that would come later, but it has so many memorable moments. You get the arrival of Spider-Man, the money shot from the trailers of both sides running at each other, Cap versus Peter, and Ant-Man becoming Gigantic Man. Now, if I'm gonna be super nitpicky, I wish that there was maybe a little bit more tension to the fight. Like, a lot of our characters are fighting each other, but it's kind of a friendly fight.
We're still friends, right?
Depends on how hard you hit me.
So there's a part of me that wishes maybe the whole thing did have a little bit more intensity to it, but honestly, even that can be excused, because the movie does a really good job of setting a clear objective, which is for Cap and his team to get on the Quinjet and fly to Siberia. So most of our heroes are not out for blood here, trying to kill each other, they're simply just trying to get to a location while the other side tries to stop them. Once again, I love Natasha's role in this movie. She lets Cap and Bucky go and stops T'Challa, because even though she is technically Team Iron Man, in this movie, she's really on the team of damage mitigation. She doesn't want to see anyone get hurt and knows that if she doesn't let Steve get away, the Avengers are only going to fall further and further apart. This sort of double agent role, as Tony calls it, was such a great idea for her because it introduces a completely different element to the movie. That being someone who doesn't have a vested interest on either side and is simply trying to keep the peace between everyone as best as they can.
I said I'd help you find him, not catch him. There's a difference.
And all of this brings us to the climax of the film, the movie's brilliant final twist. Throughout the film, we've been shown flashbacks to December 16th, 1991. The opening scene of the film showed us Bucky carrying out a mission to extract something from someone with very little context. Then, halfway through, we're shown this flashback again, this time revealing that the substance was used to create more super soldiers. And you think, that's it. What else is there to know? Well, apparently, a lot. Because when we cut back to it for the third and final time, we get the huge reveal that the people in the car were Tony Stark's parents, and Bucky is the one who killed them. There's something about this that felt almost a little bit Christopher Nolan to me. Like, it kind of reminded me of Oppenheimer, where in that film, we're also shown a very important scene that takes place between Oppenheimer and Albert Einstein. But just like in this movie, we don't get the full story, and we keep cutting back to it until the very end of the movie, where we're finally able to see the entirety of what went down in that scene and recontextualize it in a brilliant way. The plot twist also works on a whole bunch of levels. Number one, it shows that Zemo is a genius and one of the best villains in the entire MCU. Like, he was able to stay one step ahead of the Avengers throughout the entire movie, lure them all the way to Siberia, and still have the humility to know that he can't beat them. But he could get them to beat each other. So he plays the video and simply steps back into the darkness. His job complete. But the twist also works to overcome the biggest challenge with a Civil War storyline, which is, how could you believably get your characters into a position where they truly are trying to kill each other without it feeling forced or unnatural? And I think what the movie recognizes so well is that it had to come down to a massive personal revelation. Like, throughout the film, they've been fighting over their different ideological stances with regards to how the Accord should work. But that was never enough to get them to this point where Tony literally wants to murder Bucky. That level of rage and blindness was only going to come from some very deeply personal betrayal. And that's why, even though we know it wasn't Bucky's fault, he wasn't in control, you can completely get where Tony's coming from. After all, his reason is universally understandable.
He killed my mom.
The final fight of this movie is perhaps still the most dramatic scene in the entire MCU. Like, there's been larger scale, more epic sequences in this franchise. Hell, there's been bigger battles even in this movie. But in terms of pure emotion, I'm not sure any MCU fights have topped this. But anyways, guys, these are just my thoughts on Captain America Civil War. Let me know, where does this movie fall in your rankings of the MCU, and are you Team Cap or Team Iron Man? If you guys like this video and want to watch another, click somewhere on the screen to see what YouTube thinks you'd like, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.